Hello, good evening, and welcome back. Good news. The Spanish election results are in, and as we can see, the socialists have continued to lose. Despite a slight increase earlier in the year, they are declining again, and the so-called far-right party are increasing quite substantially, over doubling their vote share from before, and the centre-right party is also increasing quite substantially, by about a third, as can be seen in the graphic up here. What this means is, of course, the Socialist Party is trying to form a coalition, and they have to include 4 other parties within their government in order to create a majority, just to try and eke out any semblance of sense, put bluntly, by keeping out anyone who is mildly right-wing. However, as this will continue to unfold and they will continue to lose their power and will run out of other people's money to spend, eventually sense will come back, reality will come knocking, and of course the right-wingers will come back to party to knock some sense into them, and then be able to say, okay, cool, now that you've spent all the money and then some, let's actually try and get this back on track so that we can get spending under control, stop taxing people, charge them an arm and a leg for things that they shouldn't even have to pay for, and now we can do things properly again. So the BBC breaks this down a bit more, as this one is from The Guardian. So as you can see, they say, socialists lead amid right-wing surge. The governing Socialist Party in Spain looks set to win the most seats in the general election, but fall short of a majority with almost all the results in. And the graphic I've just shown you shows what the results are. So, they say their voter turnout was 56.8%, almost 4 points lower than at the last general election in April. This is quite common that the people lose faith in the democratic process and saying, well, what's the bloody point, considering these cunts always get in and they don't stand for what we believe in anyway. But it is nice to see that their government then has to be formed of 5 different parties, suggesting that even with something like a first-past-the-post system, you can still get some divergence of thought, given that people don't believe that it's just a 2-party race. So, they say, although socialists have emerged as winners, having suffered only slight losses in this election, the overall result is not a positive one for the acting Prime Minister. Fantastic. With Podemos having lost some ground and Maspai securing only a handful of seats, there is no clear left-wing majority. The socialist arch-rivals on the right, the PP, have recovered many of the seats they lost in April's ballot. Wonderful. If the country's long-standing political stalemate is to be broken, Mr. Sanchez might have to seek the support of the PP, or else a third election in the space of 1 year could beckon, as they've had 4 elections in 4 years. Meanwhile, the huge surge by the Nationalist Vox Party makes it the country's third political force and will now find it easier to set the agenda on the right. That is likely to hinder any attempts by Sanchez to seek a conciliatory solution to the Catalan crisis. Fan-bloody-tastic. We seem to be going more of a individualist route, and of course these are also Eurosceptics as well, as people who decide that the individual and independence is better tend to be more Eurosceptic because they don't want a bigger body governing them and deciding what they can and can't do. The exception, of course, being the Scottish Nationalist Party, saying that they want independence while also then being ruled by the EU overlords. But I suppose logic never really made sense to any leftist, did it? So, that election ended in deadlock and the 2 parties failed to form a coalition together by the September deadline, which was Sunday's election. To form a coalition now, they would need to form alliances with smaller nationalist parties. Meanwhile, the PP and Vox could seek to make the most of their gains if confirmed. And they are. One PP politician said that Socialist Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez should start to think about going, given the early results. He would have to stand down, call yet another election. At that point, anyone who was behind him would, of course, be disillusioned. They might stop voting as well, in which case you'd probably have less than half the population actually voting, seeing as they're having so many elections now, and go, well, what's the bloody point? In which case, the people who are more ardent and hardcore in their views would more likely be voting for the further right parties, in which case you might actually be able to get a more nationalist majority in Spain and try and set the country back on track, considering its failure more recently. If they can then get them to leave the European Union as well, seeing as they don't like being called one of the pigs of Portugal, Italy, Greece and Spain, then I'm sure that would, of course, help them and the UK as well, as the EU would lose even more bargaining power, as they would lose their stranglehold on Spain, just as they're losing their grip with the UK. Seeing how that pans out. But this should be a good omen for the election in the UK on the 12th of December, seeing how Spain is going as well, which would make the EU very worried that especially if the UK are then set to leave the UK with gains with the Tories and also the Brexit Party, taking out Labour and Lib Dems, the Lib Dems also splitting the Labour vote fantastically, then the Spanish people would feel, oh, hang on, we do actually have a chance, especially with the EU failing with the UK, then we have a shot at it as well. Why don't we vote in somebody who is more individualistic and nationalistic and can therefore pull out from the EU and make life better for us, because then we can get things done on our own terms. So it looks like it's good news. It looks like the pendulum is most definitely swinging the other way, and this is all coming into 2020, of course, with the re-election of Donald Trump in just under a year from now, which is fantastic news as well. Another 4 years of him means that whoever becomes Prime Minister in the UK can form a great agreement with Donald Trump, and by extension the United States, in which case we would be put in a very good position, and maybe a modicum of sense can return to the world, and we can try and establish some morality and a society worth living in. But as always, I'd like to hear what you guys have to say, so leave your comments down below. And thank you so much for watching. Like, share, comment, subscribe. Share this video all around, as the YouTube algorithm definitely hates these kinds of things. So thank you very much, and I will see you next time. Have a good one.